What would you do if the people who were supposed to protect your future, your own family, saw you as nothing more than a burden? I'm Audrey. I'm 35. And I never really understood what betrayal meant until my own blood turned their backs on me when I needed them the most. It all started with a wedding, or rather a vow renewal. You'd think by age 35 I would have built enough emotional armor to survive a family gathering. But nothing prepared me for what happened that night. Kimberly, my sister-in-law, looked me up and down in front of 200 guests, smirked, and said, "Thanks for coming, Audrey. Since you're here, why don't you help clear the tables? You're good at that sort of thing now, aren't you?" There was laughter, chuckles, side eyes. And then, as if the moment couldn't get more degrading, her mother leaned in with her champagne breath and sneered, "Your little brainless boy can help too. It's all he's good for." That's when my 12-year-old son, Noah, my quiet, sweet, observant boy, stood up, walked to the stage, and said into the microphone, "I have a surprise for the bride." But before I tell you what happened next, before I explain how that moment would unravel lies, upend everything my brother built, and reveal the truth my father died trying to preserve, I want to take you back. Because the only way to understand what my son did that night is to understand what they tried to take from us. My father, Howard Anderson, wasn't just my dad, he was my anchor. He was the kind of man who built something out of nothing. A self-made construction mogul who started with a pickup truck and a tool belt. But he never made us feel like we had to be rich to be worthy. Every Sunday dinner, he'd look across the table at me and my older brother Aaron and say the same thing. "Everything I've built will be split equally. Not because you've earned it, but because you're my legacy." And I believed him, without hesitation, because my father never broke his promises. Then one Tuesday morning, everything fell apart. I was standing in the kitchen helping Noah spread cream cheese on a bagel before school. He was telling me about his science project, something with black holes and orbit models, when my phone rang. Aaron's name lit up the screen. My stomach twisted immediately. Aaron never called. Not unless Kimberly needed to coordinate another picture-perfect family event. "Dad had a heart attack," he said, voice clipped, almost rehearsed. "They rushed him to Memorial. It's bad." I dropped the phone. Noah had to pick it up for me. I remember grabbing my purse with trembling hands, screaming for Noah to get his shoes on. I drove faster than I ever had, weaving through traffic like the road itself was crumbling behind me. But I didn't make it in time. By the time I burst through those hospital doors, my father, my rock, was already gone. Aaron was there, standing stiffly, speaking with the attending physician like he was the only next of kin. He didn't hug me, didn't offer a hand or a tissue or even a word of comfort. Just looked at me with this unreadable expression. Now I know it was calculation. He went quickly, he said, like it was a business update. "We need to make arrangements." Not we. He meant him. And I should have noticed then. In those early days, I was too consumed by grief to recognize the red flags. You need to understand my life had already known tragedy. My husband James died in a car accident when Noah was 5. That grief nearly crushed me. Raising a child alone, navigating sudden widowhood, losing the man who read Noah bedtime stories in silly voices. It aged me in ways no mirror could show. And Noah, oh my beautiful, complicated boy, he struggled too. Grief left its fingerprints all over him. Some doctors said his learning issues were a result of trauma. Others suggested they were always there, just buried until the structure of our lives collapsed. Whatever the cause, he needed extra help. Help that cost money I didn't have. I worked at a department store to keep flexible hours, skimped on my own needs to afford tutoring, speech, therapy, occupational assessments, anything that might help him find his footing in a world too impatient for kids like him. Aaron and Kimberly. They never missed a chance to make me feel like a failure. To them, I was the sad little sister-in-law in a run-down apartment with a slow son and a checkout job. Kimberly once told me during Christmas dinner, her smile as sweet as it was venomous. If you hadn't babied him so much after James died, maybe he wouldn't be struggling now. They called it concern. I called it cruelty. So when Aaron took control of the funeral planning, I didn't fight. I sat beside him at the funeral home, watching as he made every decision like he'd been handed the family gavel. Frank, the funeral director, barely looked at me, deferring to Aaron as if I weren't even there. When I gently suggested that Dad's fishing buddies speak at the service, Aaron waved me off. "I'm handling this, Audrey. Dad made me responsible for his affairs for a reason." At the time, I believed it was just Aaron being Aaron, practical, older, emotionally distant. I told myself that maybe Dad had trusted him to handle the hard stuff, but it never crossed my mind that he meant all of it. The funeral was devastating. A blur of faces, stories, and tears. People I hadn't seen in years came to say goodbye. They spoke of my father's generosity, his mentorship, how he gave people jobs when they were down, and advice when they didn't know they needed it. Noah stayed glued to my side, his hand gripping mine like it was the only anchor he had left. Aaron delivered a eulogy that felt like a TED Talk, polished, proud, mechanical. Kimberly sat in the front row in a designer dress I'd bet she bought for the occasion, dabbing her dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I spoke too. My voice broke halfway through a story about my dad teaching me to fish, and someone handed me a tissue. I don't even know who it was. All I remember is Noah squeezing my hand harder when I said he never missed a Sunday call, not once, until the week he died. After the service, Aaron approached me with all the warmth of a bank teller. "Readings on Friday," he said. "Gregory's office. 2:00. Don't be late." Gregory had been our father's attorney for as long as I could remember. I assumed the meeting would be sad but straightforward. Dad had always been meticulous about paperwork. He'd promised us for years that everything would be split equally. I didn't know that Friday afternoon would change the course of my life, and that my father's voice, preserved in the memory of a boy they all dismissed, would be the key to uncovering everything they tried to bury. But the real betrayal was just getting started. Gregory's office looked like the kind of place where truth went to get rebranded. Glass walls, mahogany shelves, expensive pens that no one actually used. Noah sat beside me in the reception area, flipping through a dog-eared space book, his little brow furrowed with focus. Just the sight of him there, so calm, so unaware of the storm we were about to walk into, made my stomach turn. Aaron and Kimberly arrived precisely at 2, not a minute early, not a second late. Dressed like they were there to sign a merger contract, not to close the chapter on our father's life. Kimberly barely looked at me, but she ruffled Noah's hair like he was a stray dog she'd tolerated out of social obligation. Still struggling with those multiplication tables, she asked in that syrupy tone that always masked a dagger. Noah didn't even look up. "I'm reading about black holes," he said simply. "That's my boy." Inside, Gregory wasted no time. As you know, Howard Anderson was a meticulous man. He began flipping open a folder with all the reverence of someone ordering a sandwich. This is the last will and testament executed 3 weeks before his death. 3 weeks. My brain barely registered the rest of his sentence until I heard it. "I hereby bequeath all my worldly possessions, including but not limited to my business holdings, real estate properties, and financial accounts to my son, Aaron Michael Anderson." I froze. Surely he misspoke. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "Could you repeat that part he did?" The words didn't change. Aaron. Everything. Me nothing. There were no other beneficiaries, no trust, no mention of Noah. No explanation. Aaron cleared his throat with theatrical sympathy. "Dad changed his mind, Audrey. He didn't feel you were financially responsible enough. He was worried about Noah's future, and he didn't want to risk mismanagement." His words cut like glass. Not because they were cruel, but because they were so casually delivered. I turned to Gregory. "This can't be right. My father would never do this. Never." But Gregory didn't flinch. The will is legal and was executed with medical clearance, signed on February 12th. And just like that, everything shifted. February 12th. That date itched at something deep in my memory. "Wait," I said slowly. Dad was in the hospital that day. Blood pressure complications. Aaron took him. He told me it wasn't serious. Aaron's face hardened. Are you implying I coerced him? I'm saying something doesn't add up, I said, sitting taller. Dad wasn't in his right mind on that medication. He was disoriented. He even told me he kept forgetting where his keys were. Kimberly jumped in with her usual grace. Let's be honest, Audrey, Noah has challenges. Howard was concerned you'd waste the inheritance on ineffective therapies instead of something appropriate. That was it. I turned to Noah, his face pale, his jaw tight, and then back to her. Don't talk about my son like he's not right here. He hears everything. Noah squeezed my hand. It's okay, Mom. But it wasn't. Not even close. Aaron leaned in. Look, Dad knew I'd look out for both of you if needed, but your track record, your job, your debt, it didn't inspire confidence. What help have you ever given me? I asked, my voice rising. You've never lifted a finger. Not when James died. Not when Noah struggled. Nothing. Aaron smirked. We tried to help. You made poor choices. Your job is a dead end. You wasted money on therapies. Let's face it. Noah's never going to be normal. He'll always be a burden. The room went still. Even Kimberly looked taken aback. I stood. Noah, I said calmly, please wait in the hallway. He hesitated, then slipped out silently, and I turned back to my brother with a fury I didn't even know I had. You do not speak about my son like that. He is worth 10 of you. Aaron shrugged. Well, I'm the executor. You're free to contest the will if you can afford it. Gregory chimed in, ever the helpful villain. Litigation typically costs 100 Ks, and given the medical clearance, it's unlikely you'd succeed. 50,000. I had 5,000. Total. Aaron smiled. I walked out without another word, holding my head high for Noah's sake. He was sitting on a bench, his space book closed on his lap. Is it true? He asked. Did Grandpa really think I was a burden? My heart shattered. No, sweetheart. He loved you. Something about this isn't right. That night after Noah fell asleep, I sat on my bed and cried for hours. But by morning, I had decided I wouldn't fight. Not legally, not then. We didn't have the money. And more than that, Noah didn't deserve to watch me unravel. Instead, we moved. I quit the department store. I took a job at a local community center that worked with neurodivergent kids. The pay was garbage, but the people saw Noah. They saw him. His new teacher, Benjamin, pulled me aside after 2 weeks. Your son remembers conversations word for word, he said, amazed. He has auditory recall unlike anything I've seen. We can work with that. And just like that, the cracks in Aaron's story began to show. Because one day, months later, Noah sat at the breakfast table and casually said, "Remember that call with Grandpa." When he said half would go to you and half to Uncle Aaron, I froze. You remember that word for word, he replied, taking another bite of cereal. He was on speaker while you were making spaghetti. February 4th. He said he was updating his will but wanted you to know it would still be 50-50. The exact date. The exact words. My breath caught in my throat. Because Noah wasn't wrong. He hadn't forgotten anything. And suddenly I realized neither had my father. The real story was still there. In my son's mind, in his memory. In the very thing they mocked him for. They called him brainless. But they had no idea the kind of power he held. After that breakfast conversation, after Noah calmly recited my father's promise down to the last syllable, I couldn't unhear it. It played in my head like a looped voicemail from beyond the grave. Half for you, half for Aaron. Because you're both my legacy. How could that voice, those words, vanish in a puff of legal jargon? How could my brother hold a paper and say, "Sorry, Dad changed his mind when my son had heard the truth"? Something was wrong. Deeply, deliberately wrong. But I didn't know what to do about it. That's when Noah changed. He became quieter in some ways and bolder in others. He stayed after school more often, spent time on the home computer for hours, scribbled notes I couldn't read, codes, lists, snippets of dialogue. When I asked what he was up to, he gave vague answers. Just school stuff. Science club, trying something new. He wasn't lying, but he wasn't telling the whole truth either. One night, I walked into his room and saw papers spread across the floor, notes in his tight handwriting, diagrams, printed transcripts of conversations. "What's all this?" I asked. Noah gathered the papers quickly and stuffed them into a manila folder, just organizing for school. He paused, then looked up at me with an expression I'll never forget, calm, determined. Sometimes you have to let people think they've won before they really lose. I blinked. "Where did you hear that Grandpa said it? About a business deal once." He went back to sorting, like it was no big deal, but it was. It was everything. I left his room with my heart thudding and my hands cold, because I realized something unsettling. My son wasn't just smart, he was planning something. A few days later, an envelope arrived in the mail, cream cardstock, gold foil, the kind of invitation that practically screams, "We're rich and we want you to know it." It was from Aaron and Kimberly. "You are cordially invited to the 10-year vow renewal of Aaron and Kimberly Anderson. Country Club Ballroom. Formal attire. No children under 12. I nearly laughed out loud. No children under 12, just 12 and above apparently. A category Noah had entered weeks earlier. "Are we going?" Noah asked, glancing over my shoulder. "Absolutely not." I dropped the invite into the trash like it was radioactive. The idea of sitting through their self-congratulatory circus made my stomach turn. I didn't need to be reminded of what they stole. But Noah retrieved the invitation from the bin. "I think we should go." I stared at him. Why? So Kimberly can insult us again, so Aaron can parade around pretending he earned Dad's empire. Noah shrugged. That thoughtful little shrug he always gave when his mind was 5 steps ahead of mine. It might be important. I didn't press. I didn't want to know. Because deep down I sensed something forming some storm my son had quietly been steering. I shared the situation with Heather, my closest friend at the community center. She was like the sister I'd never had the polar opposite of Kimberly, warm, grounded, and capable of condescension. "They invited you," she asked, narrowing her eyes. "After what they did, maybe they feel guilty I offered, though I didn't believe it. More like they want you in the background for optics. Like, look how gracious we are." It's manipulation wrapped in a party dress. She wasn't wrong, but still, Noah insisted. Even Benjamin during Noah's next teacher conference gave his take. "Sometimes revisiting the place where we were hurt can be empowering," he said gently. "Maybe Noah wants to face them, show them who he is now." That thought stopped me. Noah had changed. He'd grown. He wasn't that trembling boy in Gregory's office anymore. Then I noticed something else: secrecy. Whispers on the phone, closed laptop tabs, muffled calls. I caught snippets of his conversations. Yes, he said it exactly like that. "And I can get the date stamp too. We'll be there. I just need 5 minutes." I peeked into his notebook one day and saw names. Aaron, Kimberly, Gregory, dates, times, quotes in quotation marks, and underlined over and over February 12th. My son was tracking conversations like an investigator, mapping a puzzle only he understood. I didn't know whether to be terrified or proud, or both. 2 weeks before the event, I relented. "Okay, we'll go, but the second someone gets cruel, we're leaving." Agreed. Noah's face lit up like sunrise. "Thanks, Mom. You won't regret it." His certainty made my spine tingle. We went to a consignment shop. I found a simple dress that Benjamin had once complimented. Noah picked a navy button-down and khakis that made him look older than 13. We didn't look flashy. We looked like we belonged. The night before the ceremony, I passed Noah's room and found him rehearsing something, quietly speaking into the mirror. "We remember what others forget," he said softly. "And sometimes remembering is the only way to make things right." I stood frozen in the hallway, because it was in that moment I realized this wasn't just a family event. This was Noah's mission. The morning of Aaron and Kimberly's vow renewal felt like a storm pretending to be sunshine. The sky was too blue, the air too crisp, It felt like the world was holding its breath. I stood in front of the country club, gripping my clutch tighter than necessary. Noah stood beside me, calm, composed eyes scanning everything like a soldier surveying a battlefield. "Ready?" he asked. I wasn't, not even close, but I nodded. The valet took our car and we walked up the steps. Inside, a symphony quartet played in the corner, waiters floated by with champagne, and people mingled in polished heels and navy blazers. I saw familiar faces, cousins, old neighbors, Dad's colleagues. Some smiled stiffly when they saw me. Others averted their eyes. Kimberly spotted us first, her eyebrows lifted. "Oh," she said, sauntering over in a pearl-beaded dress. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Her voice was sugary with surprise. Fake surprise. She wanted me here to play the part of the overlooked sister-in-law, the charity case, the one still limping along without a husband or a fortune. I smiled politely. "Wouldn't miss it." Her eyes flicked down to Noah. "And look at this little gentleman," she cooed, crouching to his level. "I hear you've been quite the brainiac lately." Noah didn't flinch. "I just remember what people say." Kimberly blinked, caught off guard. She straightened with a laugh. Still cheeky. Then, as if on cue, Margaret, their mother, appeared. She hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. She'd barely acknowledged Noah. Now she looked us over like we were unscheduled guests at a 5-star resort. "I'll assume you remembered this is a formal event," she said dryly, eyeing my off-the-rack dress. I gave her a cool smile. "We're here to celebrate." Margaret nodded once, then leaned closer, voice low. "Stay out of the family photos." With that, she turned and floated away. I felt Noah's small hand squeeze mine. It steadied me more than any glass of champagne could. We stayed near the back of the ballroom. I saw Aaron up front clinking glasses with Gregory, the estate attorney. My stomach tightened. Was he still lying to everyone? Still pretending he hadn't manipulated a dying man? As we watched, Kimberly took the microphone. "Friends, family, thank you all for coming." She began glowing like a diamond. "Tonight isn't just about love, it's about legacy." I watched her eyes scan the room, pausing almost gleefully on me. She knew what she was doing. 10 years ago, Aaron and I stood before many of you and promised to build a life of vision and value. And thanks to his leadership at Harrison Estate Holdings and the inheritance that allowed us to expand, we've done just that. There it was, the inheritance, said with a soft wink, a barely veiled message. We won. She handed the mic to Aaron, who began a polished speech about family values, business, and resilience. It was hollow, all of it, but Noah never looked away. He was focused, waiting. Then something shifted. Noah stepped forward. I blinked. "Noah," I whispered, reaching for his hand, but he'd already slipped away. He walked to the side of the stage, right toward the AV booth. I saw him speak to the technician, a teenager in a black polo. He said something, gestured toward the mic. The kid looked confused, then slowly nodded, and then a slight feedback hum. The mic clicked. Noah stepped onto the stage, straight-backed, calm, clear-eyed. He took the microphone from Aaron before anyone could stop him. The room fell into stunned silence. Noah looked around. Then he smiled. "Hi, I'm Noah," he said into the mic. "Audrey's son. My mom's over there." Dozens of heads turned to me. "I know I'm not on the schedule," he continued, "but I just wanted to say something. Something my grandfather told me. Before he passed." Kimberly's face had gone stiff. Aaron took a step forward. I saw Gregory the attorney narrow his eyes. Noah took a deep breath. He said, and I quote, "Half for you, half for Aaron, because you're both my legacy." He told me that while I was in his hospital room. The room was dead silent. He said he loved you both, that he wanted everything split down the middle. A murmur began. Chairs shifted. But then, the will changed. Right after his last week alive. Suddenly, I disappeared from the visitation list. Suddenly, my mom's name vanished from the estate. He pulled a small remote from his pocket, and I thought, maybe people should hear what really happened. He pressed a button. Over the ballroom speakers, a voice crackled to life. My father's voice. Faint but clear, strained, recorded from a hospital bed. Tell Gregory to split it equally. I want it equal. Audrey's earned that. She's taken care of me. Gasps. Gregory froze. Noah pressed again. Another voice. Aaron's. Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of the paperwork. Audrey's got too much on her plate. She'll be fine. Then silence. Kimberly looked like she'd seen a ghost. Margaret clutched her wine glass so hard it snapped in half. I stood motionless. I couldn't breathe. Then Noah spoke one last time. I just thought you all should know what was said and what wasn't. He handed the mic back to the technician and walked down the steps, cool, calm, 13 years old and already stronger than any adult in that room. The silence cracked, like ice breaking across a frozen lake, and all hell broke loose. At first, no one moved. Not a breath, not a whisper, just a stunned, heavy silence. Then chaos cracked through the ballroom like lightning. Aunt Elise dropped her wine glass. Uncle Dennis muttered, "What the hell did we just hear?" Someone gasped audibly. Maybe Kimberly's sister. Gregory, the estate attorney, went ghost white and began whispering urgently into his phone. Aaron tried to snatch the microphone back, but it was too late. Noah had already walked off stage straight toward me, calm as ever. My legs finally unfroze, and I met him halfway dropping to my knees. He collapsed into my arms. I whispered, "You were brave. I'm so proud of you." "I just told the truth," he said softly. But what he did? It was more than that. It was a strike of lightning through 7 years of darkness. Kimberly tried to recover, stepping back up to the mic, laughing awkwardly. "Clearly someone's been playing with audio software," she said with a brittle smile. "Let's not let a child's game ruin a beautiful night." But she didn't get to finish, because that's when Edward, my father's friend and retired attorney, stood up from the third row. "I have something to add," he said, voice sharp as a gavel. Kimberly blinked. Aaron turned pale. Edward walked slowly toward the front of the room, a slim black folder in his hand. "I was asked to hold this," he said, holding up the folder in case Mr. Harrison suspected any wrongdoing regarding his estate. "This is a notarized version of his original will, witnessed and signed 2 days before the one Mr. Kessler submitted." Gregory stammered, "That's not possible. The version I submitted was prepared by you." Edward finished flatly after access to Mr. Harrison's hospital room was suddenly revoked for everyone except Aaron Langford, suspiciously revoked. Gasps rippled again. Kimberly clutched Aaron's arm. "Fix this," she hissed, her mic still on. Aaron reached for the mic. "Everyone, please calm down. This is being blown out of proportion." My father was confused. He wasn't in his right mind. "You mean the father you said didn't want Audrey there while cutting her and his grandson off?" Edward snapped. A few guests got up and started collecting their things. Some were whispering. Others just stared. Then another voice rang out from the back. "Where's the donor fund money, Aaron?" It was Colin, a venture capitalist who'd invested in Harrison Estate Holdings, based on Aaron's word. "We wired $400K for veteran housing. Why is it listed as a consulting fee in your company filings?" I looked at Noah. He nodded slightly. He'd sent Colin a package last week. Anonymous, of course. Aaron's mouth opened, closed, opened again. And then Kimberly stepped away from him. "Aaron," she said quietly, "is there anything you didn't lie about?" The room was unraveling around them like threads in a torn curtain. Margaret stood up, shaky. "Aaron." "Tell them this isn't true." Aaron's voice cracked. "Mom, it was for the family. I didn't think Audrey what she spat. That I was worthy," I said, stepping forward. My voice carried now. "You didn't think a widowed single mother was worthy of Dad's legacy. You didn't think Noah deserved to be part of this family." Aaron's face twisted. You always played the victim. I was the one handling everything. I made the hard calls and forged the easy documents Edward added holding up the will. At that moment, Noah calmly pulled something from his coat pocket, a small flash drive. I have backups, he said simply, in case anyone tries to deny anything. And that was it. The dam broke. People got up. Some clapped me on the shoulder as they left. Others said nothing, but their eyes, once judgmental, now glimmered with guilt. Even Margaret didn't stop me as I passed. The last thing I saw before I reached the door was Kimberly sitting on a chair, head in her hands. Aaron stood next to her, crumbling as Gregory tried in vain to dial someone. Noah and I stepped outside into the crisp night air. It smelled like cut grass and rain. He looked up at me. Did I do okay? I smiled through tears. You did more than okay. You gave me back my name, and I meant it. The little boy they'd dismissed was the one who saved me. 2 weeks later, the new will was validated in probate court. The judge didn't even need the full hour between the audio recordings, Edward's notarized copy, and a flood of new affidavits from staff and visitors who'd been blocked from seeing my father in his final days. It was an open and shut case. The inheritance was split 50-50 between Aaron and me, as it was always meant to be. But honestly, I didn't care about the money. What mattered was the truth. What mattered was Noah standing beside me in a navy blazer, clutching my hand as the judge read the ruling aloud. When we stepped out of the courthouse, cameras flashed. Journalists swarmed us. But I shielded Noah and simply said, "We're not here for headlines. We're here for closure." And that was true. Closure. And something more. After the court ruling, things moved fast. Gregory Kessler was placed under investigation by the state bar. His license is currently suspended pending further review. Aaron tried to salvage his reputation, but clients fled faster than rats off a sinking ship. Colin and the other venture partners froze funding and launched a forensic audit of the company's finances. Several questionable consulting fees came to light. Rumors of embezzlement swirled. I didn't press charges. I didn't have to. The system would handle him now. Kimberly filed for separation a week later. A quiet move. No press statement. No photos. Just a cold split down the middle. Ironic, really, considering how hard they'd fought to keep everything from me. Margaret sent me a single card in the mail. No return address. Just a handwritten note I didn't know. I should have. I'm sorry. I didn't write back. Not out of cruelty, but because some doors once closed need to stay shut for peace to bloom. Instead, I focused on Noah. He was my North Star through all of this. His teacher called me one day in tears. He gave a presentation to the class about integrity, she said. He talked about how being quiet doesn't mean being weak, and that telling the truth, even when your voice shakes, is worth everything. I cried for an hour after that, and then I got to work. With my portion of the inheritance, I created the Second Voice Foundation, a nonprofit supporting children with exceptional memory and neurodiverse learning needs. We provide advocacy training technology tools and family support resources. It's named after something Noah said to me the night before the vow renewal. "Mom, if the first voice lies, someone has to be the second voice." He was right. And now dozens of children like him will never have to wonder if they're gifts or burdens. They'll know they're powerful, respected, protected. As for me, I bought a modest home just outside the city, close to Noah's new school, with a big yard and space for a golden retriever he's been asking about since he was 5. We named him Justice. Fitting, really. Sometimes I still get emails from people who were at that vow renewal. Apologies, confessions. "We didn't know. We're so sorry." And I always say the same thing. It's okay. We know who we are now. Because the truth didn't just set us free. It built something new. Not a dynasty. Not an empire. But a family. A future. And a name Noah can be proud to carry. My name.